Two friends, Alan Dale and Jerry Carew, who grew up just a few streets apart in St. John's East End, have been separated by Canada's geography for 3 decades. They came together virtually during the pandemic to chat about like-minded interests. Alan lives in PEI and Jerry in Newfoundland. Thriving in remoteness has been a common theme for both of them during the pandemic. Gale Force Winds, the podcast is the result.
And welcome to another edition of Gale Force Winds. I'm Alan Dale, and with me as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's, Jerry Carew. How are you, Jerry?
Alan, couldn't be better. We've done an awful lot of interviews this particular week, first week of September. We've got a hurricane bearing down on us here in St. John's, Newfoundland. But I am so interested in our next guest. I'll just let you get on with it. She's a busy lady.
100%, Jerry. Look, I love conversations of inspiration and people that are doing really cool things and inspiring other people along the way. And it's all happening right in our backyard, right here in Atlantic Canada. So many good stories to be told. And I can't wait to get into the conversation with Dr. Heather Morrison. I'm going to call her Heather for the duration of the interview. We'll dispense with the formalities. But sometimes people have a lot of labels. They have labels like Rhodes Scholar, athlete, daughter, mother, partner, you name it, leader, hero. All those things resonate very well when we talk about Heather Morrison. So, Heather, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, hi, Alan and Jerry. It is a pleasure to be here. I am so happy that I am actually sitting here working and living in a province that I grew up in here in Prince Edward Island. I grew up on a farm out in York Point with my sister and my parents, who really didn't farm, but we leased our land to the farmers next door. But what a great playground to grow up in. And it was one of those arrangements where they would help us with the hay for the horses, and then they would farm the land. And I think back about, I think it was David Wheel one time wrote a comment that somehow when you grow up on PEI, you ingest the island. And I think that really was part of what happened to me growing up in a place that was a happy, safe location and close to the water. And I loved it. We had a couple of horses, some dogs, chickens, and I think at one point we even had a couple of pigs and some sheep. So I very much grew up that way.
Heather, Jerry and I are both from St. John's, Newfoundland, specifically the East End of St. John's, about as far east as you can go, both of us. And Newfoundland has a way to draw you home, and it connects you to your community. And there's something about Newfoundlanders, they want to be home, right? There's this expression, and I'm sure you've heard it. How do you tell the Newfoundlanders in heaven? Because they're the ones that want to go home. But Prince Edward Island has that as well. Prince Edward Island has a genuine connection to the people that are from here. Expand on that. Tell me why that is.
Well, I mean, I think maybe it's from the little rock and the big rock. There is something I think fairly unique about growing up on islands and the communities. And I think we're fortunate. This is one of the largest small communities that we really all have here in Prince Edward Island, and all feeling part of that community. And so I think it's a privilege in every way as a physician who's come back here to work, to look after people you care about and in a place that you care about. And I think that has certainly given even an enhanced meaning to the work that we do. And I had the chance to go to school here, and my first undergraduate degree was at the University of Prince Edward Island. And so I have those lots of different connections that really helped make me feel that this was really home.
Heather, I've had the privilege of meeting your mom and your dad and your sister over time, and lovely people. Tell me about the foundation they provided you growing up and the things that they taught you that you took into the world.
Well, and I've thought about that too. I mean, I've had great role models with my parents. They, certainly very loving environment and to grow up in, but also one. My parents talked a lot about serving and serving the community in whatever capacity that was in. And my father did some work internationally with international human rights. He worked locally here, and my mother was in education as well. But it was always that service to community, I think, was part of the fabric, I think. And I remember being away at university at one point in time, and it may have even happened before that, but I remember feeling a little down in the dumps for whatever reason. And my mother is saying, don't think about yourself. Why don't you think about somebody else? What could you do for someone else? Because I know that will help you feel better. And so right from the beginning, it was about how do you think about others, and then what can you do to help?
Well, that's an incredible piece of advice there from your mom. And you've certainly taken that theme forward in your life. Tell me a little bit about your academic journey. Where did you study and what made you tick, and what were the things that made you excited in that journey?
Well, I mean, I ended up doing a degree in science, biology at the University of Prince Edward Island. But I was mentioning this as I have one of my children now starting their first year, the oldest one at high school. I was in high school and I had, for some reasons, I had an extra credit and I didn't need to take chemistry. But I was taking it, and I didn't think I thought I wanted to continue the course. And I went to the teacher and I said, with all the assurance of someone in high school, and I said, I don't think I'll do anything related to science for the rest of my life. So I'd like to drop the course. And he said, because I thought it's going to be my lowest mark and the marks might matter. And this teacher said to me, let's make a deal. You work really hard in this class, and when you're at the very end of the class, if you're not happy with your mark, we'll pretend you never took it. And anyway, and then I went on and I took chemistry first year at UPEI, and I stayed in science that first degree. So I'm always very thankful for him to have encouraged me when I was in high school. And then at the end of my fourth year at the University of Prince Edward Island, I was trying to think about next steps and applying to medical school, but I also was encouraged to apply for this Rhodes Scholarship at the time, and I'm not sure I really understood exactly what it meant when I put the application in, and very fortunate to have been the recipient of that scholarship. And I mean, you mentioned before, I think it was something at the time when I got awarded it, because I was the first female from Prince Edward Island to have ever had a Rhodes Scholarship. And I was the first person from the University of Prince Edward Island. So those were, those were things that I hadn't considered when I applied, but certainly it afforded me that opportunity to go and study overseas at Oxford University. And in the end, I did a master's degree and a doctorate at the University of Oxford, and it was a wonderful experience, mainly because of the people and that I met and the learning that happened even outside the study hall. And then I came back and went to medical school at Dalhousie University, and then did training in community medicine, which is what has become public health and preventative medicine. And finally took a year to do some more training in emergency medicine, because I always had liked that part too. So that's sort of a long bit of education and.
Well, you've had a long education, so of course it's going to take some time. But I want to know this: what's it like walking on to the campus on Oxford, young woman from PEI, coming from the farm? What's it like when you walk on there? What's that first few days like for you?
I mean, I still look back on that time and I think, wow, I couldn't really believe I was there. I mean, I had never been to England when I went over there. And, they going to dinner in the sort of in the college, you'd have to wear what they call sort of sub-fust, meaning you had a black sort of a gown on, and you often had to have a hat on. And I mean, this was so new to me in every possible way, but it was meeting people from all over the world and learning what they were studying. But I think I was nervous and a bit scared walking onto campus and being there. And I had also heard that it was hard to have, like, they didn't have the same kind of heating as in some of the dorms. So I was very concerned about, would I get a place that actually had a hot shower or would I always have to take a bath? I remember thinking some of those practical things too.
Was athletics a big part of your academic journey as well?
Yes, Alan. I mean, I've enjoyed sports and being involved in athletics. I did a lot of field hockey at the University of Prince Edward Island. I loved it. And I know two of my girls that I think feel like I'm certainly encouraging them to play at junior high and high school. But so I did a lot of field hockey and some running and did some of that through even over at Oxford. Tried a little bit of rowing over there too at the college level. So it's always been part of what I like to do, to be active. And my husband, of course, even as a grown-up, has tried to teach me how to windsurf, and so that's been. I haven't had much time to do that lately, but that's been a fun little thing to try to do.
Field hockey, Alan, always impressed me. I can skate, but I can also glide. In field hockey, there's no gliding, so.
Heather, that's an impressive academic journey for sure. You became a medical doctor. Did you immediately start practicing in Prince Edward Island, or did you go somewhere else in between? Or?
Well, so when I finished part of my residency, I did do some work in Ontario, but very soon came after my father was diagnosed with cancer at the time, and I finished some of my training in Toronto and thought I should come home because I wasn't sure what would happen and wanted to be closer, but thought I would only be back in Prince Edward Island for a short period of time. So I have spent almost most of my career here in Prince Edward Island, either in the emergency department or in public health. We did move to Saipan, and I did practice in the Mid-Pacific for a period of time, which was a great experience in a very different part of the world. But came back and have been happily raising our family here.
Tell me about that Saipan experience.
I mean, it's interestingly another island, so but quite remote. And I mean, they were seeing, tuberculosis, some leprosy. There was some real, interesting infectious diseases, but they also looked after each other in a different way, a very family-focused kind of community. And but we loved it. I mean, I know I loved being in Prince Edward Island, and we always say we love all four seasons, but it was actually nice not for at least a year not to have any snow, and so that was I didn't mind that too much.
The people in Saipan, I'm sure island life is island life around the world. Are they did you find a lot of similarities in the community and how they interacted with one another, the same that you find here at PEI?
Certainly some similarities where, I was always struck by on Sunday afternoons, it'd be, big gatherings of families on the beach to, have barbecues and cooking together. And I mean, it may not look the same, but we're often having Sunday dinners, with families here and extended family in this province. And so I noticed that for sure. But they also, it was also a harder environment in the sense that there's a very minimal wealth, and so you really notice those basic needs that were there, from lack of housing and support and income certainly was noted as well.
Somehow that sense of community, though, it outweighs everything, doesn't it? That connection with one another and knowing that help is right next door. It's, we have that in PEI. They have that in Newfoundland. We're very fortunate to be a part of that. You're a big part of that, Heather, in your current role, and in what service is the best way to describe it that you're providing into Prince Edward Island. But before we get into all that, I want to know a little bit more now. You're a mom. How many kids?
So I have 4 children, and I had 2 girls and 2 boys, and they're from start to finish. They're just over 6 years, I think 3 months between the oldest and the youngest. And they give us such joy every day. And they keep me grounded. They give me perspective. I learn from them. I said to one of them the other day, I've never been a mother to someone in grade 10. So, we're gonna go through this together. I'm gonna learn from you, and we'll do this together. But and then the youngest one, not sure he needs to go to school, but and even had me check on the phone this morning to make sure that all this rain wouldn't have canceled or delayed school. And I thought it's going to be a long year for checking for cancellations in September because of weather. So they're wonderful. I'm very blessed with these 4 children.
It's amazing how kids have such different personalities. They growing up in the same home, everything is the same, but they can be completely different. I know,
I know my husband is enjoying it, who is enjoying them tremendously as well, and loves to watch them in anything they're doing, they are a gift. And I think the last year and a half has been challenging for them in many ways as well, because I haven't been as present. I haven't had a chance to do as many things with them, and they are conscious of that, but they also wouldn't want me to do anything different. I mean, they understand. They find it hard if someone isn't. If someone is upset with me, and I share that, they find that hard. They don't always understand it, but when I ask them if they would want me to do anything else, they say no. We're happy that you're doing the job you are.
They're getting a sense of service right from a very early age. That's a great thing. That's a great trait to grow up with, and that only makes the world better if our kids understand that sense of service. Jerry and I are very fortunate to have really supportive partners and allow us to flourish, and they understand us. And tell me about that. Now I know your husband, and I know what a wonderful guy he is. Tell me about the importance of that supportive partnership.
Well, I am quite certain I would not have managed to survive the last couple of years in this pandemic without his support and his commitment to the family, to me, to the children. I mean, he works full time as well, and he does shift work, which makes scheduling always challenging. But he's really a good man, and if you can say, wonderful husband, wonderful father, wonderful person, then I'll talk about being blessed, to have that kind of partnership to go through.
Yeah, he's a real genuine guy. There's no doubt about it, despite the fact that we were both arrested in London together, but that's a whole other podcast. A whole other podcast.
So we won't delve into that.
So Heather,
there might be a little bit of exaggeration there.
Listen, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. That's so. Heather, here you are in the moment. Now you're juggling life, 4 kids, busy. I mean, you're working in the ER, public health. You're juggling this whole life, and then 18 months ago, and the pandemic hits. And in fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had gone out to supper maybe a day or two before really things went south fast. Am I right?
Yeah, I think it may have been the last time I was out at a restaurant, Alan.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So tell me, I mean, you've had an incredibly complicated year. Complicated is probably a good way to describe it. And I want to dive into, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, because to be quite honest with you, what's happened in the last 18 months doesn't define Heather Morrison. It is a piece of you, and my gosh, are we glad that we had that piece of you. But there's so much more to you, as we just learned. But I want you to tell me a little bit about kind of getting through the last 18 months, because I can tell you on the outside looking in, you've got everything under control. You seem to have everything under control, and people immediately respond to you when you come on and you tell us the way things are going to be. It's true, genuine leadership, the likes of which is rarely seen. People respond to you, and your smiles and your approach and your desire for people to be compassionate to one another has navigated us through these tumultuous times. There's no doubt about it. But I want you to tell me the last 18 months, how's it been? Like, how's it been for you?
Well, I mean, I think it's been stressful. I mean, there's no, but I think it's also been stressful for many people. And we talk all the time about the fact that COVID has impacted everybody, not just here, but all over the world in some way. And so there's, a lot of people have worked really hard, and it's been stressful. But I mean, I know you would say this too, because of all your work in leadership. I mean, it's, I do feel the responsibility of the role I'm in, and leadership really needs to happen when it's not just good times. It's when it's rough times that the leadership is really needed. And so I have this legislative responsibility and role that I feel the weight of, and it never goes away. And so I think that's that unrelenting kind of pressure and responsibility that I feel, because I don't want people to get really sick. I don't want our hospitals to get full, so that if you it's not there if you need the hospital for something else. It's filled with patients with COVID. I mean, these are the things that keep me up at night. Are we doing everything we can to make sure that we have the safest, most protected, healthiest population, but you're always trying to balance that with the impacts either way, but I have an incredible team around me, and that we often say in here, we're becoming part of history. This pandemic is going to be looked back on for many, many years as a significant pandemic, and we'll have been part of it in our own little way in this province. So,
Heather, I read one time that pressure is a privilege. Frankly, I'm not sure I'd want to be as privileged as you've been in the last 2 years.
I don't think most people would want to do my job. But there's been good things that have happened and things that have been hard. But we have to keep going, and life is like being on a bicycle in some ways. I mean, you can't stop pedaling, otherwise you'll fall over. And that's what we have to do.
Yeah, you're right. Heather, you talk a little bit about the team, and you're the tip of that iceberg. You're the piece that we can see, but there's so much underneath you. Tell me about those people that are leaning into this every day and what they mean to you.
Oh, I mean, I am so thankful for each and every one of our team, but also the partners. We have many partners that are part of the process. I can almost hear a couple of them in next door as we're speaking.
You must have queued them up to talk at that time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They have given of themselves. It's impacted their families and their lives as well in a different way. I'm thankful. I'm amazed. I talked about one of the team members yesterday and said, to have watched them grow in their own leadership and what they can manage I always knew it was there, but I've seen them rise to the occasion in a way that I am so proud of as well. And so I think it's really you mentioned privilege, a privilege to work with them. And I look outside and I see the pouring rain, and I think about the screeners who are up at the bridge, standing in the rain and the wind, and they don't have an easy job. So even from the screeners to the people who are here or texting me late at night saying, "Did you read this article? Have you seen this?" Who ask the right questions during a policy meeting, and also deal with our compassionate requests related to someone, during the course of the pandemic, someone needing to come or leave, and so it's really such a varied team, but everyone has done their part, and that, of course, we say that Islanders have done their part,
100%.
And so it's this team, but really that team and our partners extends to Islanders that have stood up, rolled up their sleeves, whether they've stayed home when they were asked to do so, whether we, minimized the transmission, they've isolated when they've had to return from travel. I mean, none of those things are easy. And so that it's been really quite incredible to see this progress over this long period of time.
Yeah, 100%. And incredible is a great way to describe it. I mean, everybody has been leaning in to get there. I mean, everybody in their own little way is trying to do their part to kind of get us through this together. Newfoundland is the same. Newfoundland is the same way, leaning in, trying to get through this together for the good of one another, because we know that together we're all stronger in this thing. But you're leading it, Heather. You're the one leading it, and I don't say that lightly. You are truly the one leading us through these complicated times, and it's very impressive. But it is so, and it must be so rewarding for you to see the team gel together and see the positive outcomes and the way people are interacting and reacting with one another with true, genuine compassion and indeed love for one another to get us through this. Now, you talked a little bit about some good things that happen and some happy moments during all of this. Tell us a couple of those.
Well, I mean, I think we all have to enjoy some of the moments that maybe aren't quite as serious, because there's lots of, really tough things that we see. And I know I was, it made me smile, definitely. I got a picture from, sent in to me of a chicken that had been named after me, and it was called Feather Morrison. And it was a beautiful looking bird, but we got quite a kick out of that. And so, I mean, these are small little things, but the kindness of people have dropped off. I mean, everything from food to blankets, and they're giving their time and their talents and feel moved to do that. And I mean, I came home the other day, and there's no return address. There's no. It was a card, and someone had made knit a blanket, and like that is heartwarming, and it seems to come on the days when I might be facing some of the rougher emails or the more pressure from one direction or the other, and so those are the ones that are happy and have made us smile, and lots of nice moments.
A chicken named after you, Feather Morrison, and a cow. You had a cow?
Yeah, I just had a cow, and I'm sort of Dr. Rob Strang in Nova Scotia. He said he had a racehorse named after him, Dr. Strang, and so he was quite proud of that. And I said, well, I've had a chicken and a cow, right. So, and so we've compared.
Yeah, I love those little gestures, right? I don't know what it is about them, but they kind of level us as a, of course, Bonnie Henry, who's a friend of yours, Heather, but you should know she's also a friend of Jerry and I's from the Navy. And of course, Bonnie had a pair of shoes made in her name, which I think is fantastic. It has a way to level us, doesn't it? It really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. Heather, so you got a steady hand on the tiller here. You're gonna get Prince Edward Island through this thing. There's no doubt about it. I hope that you can feel the love from the broader community, because it's certainly out there. And your team, and I hope that your team feels that love as well, because it's out there. Everybody genuinely appreciates what it is that you're doing. We really do. So what's on the horizon? What's next for Heather Morrison? We're going to get through this. There's an end to this. There definitely is. And then where do you see, like, what do you hope to achieve in the next 10, 15 years? Where do you see that going?
Well, I mean, I think that's a really good question. But I think, I am pretty focused on trying to see if we can navigate this last, what I hope is a bit of a last leg and transition of COVID. And I think that will be the next few months. And then I think trying to make sure that there's a recovery period in many ways for the team, as they need to also put more focus on the other aspects of public health that they were working on and still need to work on. And that's from the health promotion to other communicable diseases and everything in between. So I think there'll be a period of time that we need to all refocus a little bit into other aspects of public health, which will be equally and are equally important, and may even be more important as we recover from COVID. And then I look forward to spending some more time, hopefully by next summer, with the family. And so those are sort of, I know, relatively short-term goals, but I think I'm going to try to use some of the skills I think that have been I certainly enhanced, I think, in my learnings over the last couple of years, and try to use them in a different way, maybe to serve, but I have not thought too far ahead yet.
Right. Certainly the experience, not only for you, but for all the people that have been involved in it, it's going to make them stronger, isn't it? It's going to make them stronger.
Yes, absolutely. If it hasn't put us under yet, it's we'll be stronger. And I mean, this has been like an ultra marathon. It's tested our resilience. And it's so for all involved, it is about that resiliency to keep going, and the resilience to get through it, and then we will be stronger for it. Actually, my predecessor, Dr. Lamont's Sweet, told me after he was still working part-time during H1N1. And he said to me near the end of it, he said, I knew when we got through he said, when I got through the meningitis situation here in PEI, it was many years ago, I knew it was a really hard time for me in public health. But I knew when I got through it, I was gonna make it. Like I was gonna be okay. I could face whatever challenge came my way. And he said, at the time, he said, now having watched you get through H1N1, I know that you'll be able to face some of the challenges ahead. And I think that's going to happen to people involved here. Like we've gotten through this pandemic, and we'll be that much stronger to face whatever the next public health challenge is that comes our way.
It's interesting, hey, how these challenges, and they put tools in our toolbox. They give us skills that we can call upon later, and and even our kids, your kids, my kids, they're seeing things through all of this, and they're putting tools in their toolbox. They know the right way to respond to one another in a crisis and all of that kind of stuff. Now, I didn't have that when I was growing up. There was no crisis in my life in Newfoundland growing up, right? You know what I mean? It was honest to God, right? I mean, when I was a young kid growing up in Newfoundland, it was a boulevard of green lights. There was nothing like COVID. And so I didn't have that skill. But our kids now have that skill because they've watched how we've navigated as a community, as a society through this. And then it's going to make them stronger too. And I always look at that and say, my gosh, these kids are getting tools right now that's going to help them so much. It's going to make the world a better place. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. I hope so too, Alan. And and it's, I think, hard to measure what our children, young people have learned, and there'll be some hard things, but having to be able to pivot and change plans and adjust and adapt. Yeah. And those are such big skills to have through life. And I think in very sort of subtle ways, they're learning that. And maybe not so subtle sometimes, but definitely having to learn some of those skills.
100%. Well, we always ask our guest people that have had interesting journeys, people that, in my opinion, are very inspirational. You certainly fit that category. To leave the audience with one small piece of advice, what would that takeaway be from you, Heather?
Well, I mean, I think I think of two things. One, I guess what I've been saying to everyone at the end of all these different press conferences, and I really do think it's true, that we work at being patient and we work at being kind. And I think trying to keep those things in mind as we go through every day will help ourselves and help the people we are in relationships with or communicate with. But the other thing that comes to mind is something my father actually said, and it was in relation to your sort of life partner and what will sustain it. And I think it applies more broadly. You can care for someone else, but there's three things he talked about that will make it last for a long time. It's that any kind of caring for others requires hard work, and it just because you say you care is not enough. You need to work hard at it. You need to have kindness, and that is also work sometimes to be kind, and also have some laughter. And if you have those sort of, and that's that positive attitude. And I think if you have that positive attitude, maybe some laughter, kindness, hard work, and you approach all the people around you, and those relationships, whether they're at work, at home, it'll probably serve us quite well. And so I think of his words not infrequently.
He was a wise man.
Yeah.
And he sure will be proud of you.
Well, I'm sure he would be.
Jerry, your final thoughts?
Well, I just really appreciate having you on, Heather. Living in Newfoundland, I knew your name, but I have not watched any of your press conferences or anything. So I can tell that the people of PEI are in good hands. A couple of things, the pandemic for me was incredibly tumultuous. Working in sales when everything is shut down doesn't make it very easy. So that was rough. I said goodbye to my mom on FaceTime. That was extremely rough, and I'm still dealing with that. Been lots of ups and downs, frankly. But listening to one thing you said early on, your mom said to you, don't think about yourself, think about others. Wow. What a great thing your mom has given you by saying that. So just thanks.
Well, another wonderful edition of Gale Force Winds, and what a privilege it was to be in conversation with Dr. Heather Morrison. And if you can't find inspiration when we listen to her words and we understand her genuine, deep down desire to serve her community and where that comes from mom and dad, and then she's passing it on to her kids, and it's a recipe for success to make this world a better place. I can tell you, Prince Edward Island is sure happy to have Heather Morrison right here with us right now, leading us through these complicated times. We're in incredibly good hands. Heather, the community loves you. We love your team. We embrace everything that you're doing for us. And I want to thank you on behalf of many, many people who don't have the opportunity to speak to you directly like this, but I do. And I take it very serious when I say thank you for so many people that you're doing great work for us. And it's really fantastic. But it was so good to get to know Heather Morrison beyond what we see on the news every day. And all those labels, Rhodes Scholars and mom and doctor and all of that, it's just such a perfect combination. You're a wonderful person, Heather. We're absolutely honored to have you here on Gale Force Winds. And I always like to leave the audience with my own piece of advice, and that is, quite frankly, the world needs more Heather Morrison.
Well, thank you both very much. It was a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Winds. That's Gale Force Winds, WINS.com.